In most of my presentations, I kind of like just, the way I look at things is just look at you guys like a group of investors, right? That's how I look at it, right? Because, I mean, here I'm speaking as the regional CEO, but I'm actually just, how I look at it as an entrepreneur, right? An entrepreneur, you always have to be pitching, no matter what size, what level of business you're at, right? So, for me, like, I will try to share with you guys, because of just kind of the startup community and the nature of this launch pad, of just kind of like how entrepreneurial, like, you know, I am, but also share with you some tidbits. The question also that a lot of companies, or a lot of people ask, right, is why? Right? You have to always figure out why are you building the company that you're building? Like, what is the reason? And really very simple. So, my history is, let's say, media, advertising, and commerce. I think that the future is, you know, every media company is now going to start to think about e-commerce and about advertising. And every advertising company is going to start to think about media and also commerce. So every company is going to start to think about all three, right? And really my background was in media and advertising and commerce, and I realized that there was a massive bottleneck in Thailand, actually in the region, right? So online advertising at 3% region-wide, e-commerce is at 1%. So you're wondering, like, when is it going to get to double digits, online advertising, right? I mean, why are we not like China, all the other neighboring countries, right? And there's a fundamental issue, at least that's what we thought the problem was, which is online advertising at 3%, it's because brands and companies are not making money, right? Meaning on e-commerce. If they're starting to sell, they're going to put a lot of money in advertising, right? So why are they not selling? What's wrong with e-commerce? Then you go down deeper and it's like, there's a serious problem. In e-commerce, it's not easy to set up e-commerce. You know, you have so many problems: logistics, delivery, COD, payments, call center, etc., right? So to solve e-commerce and to solve the advertising problem, we had to go and actually fix what we thought was the core, right? Or the biggest problem, which was logistics. And this is why we are building what we are building, because we think that this is going to open up the ecosystem. This is going to open up the market. So some of the data I'll flip through, right? Just because it's a bit, some of it's heavy, but I'll just point out some of the stuff. Before I go in, I have to explain kind of what we do, right? So it's design, develop, production, payments, customer call center, transactional marketing, basically marketing services, performance-based, email and data management. That is on the, what we call demand generation side. Demand generation means how do I create demand, right? Like marketing, advertising. See, there's a lot of this in our markets, a lot of content, right? Look at Facebook, right? You see so much crap on Facebook that you want to buy and you're like, how do I buy it? You can't buy it. It's just like nice to look at. Why? Because the demand fulfillment side isn't there. That's what we had to build, right? The demand fulfillment, inbound items like quality control, stock, B2C, B2B, flash logistics, being able to handle 10,000 orders in and 10,000 orders out the following day, right? So this isn't, you know, this is a different type of logistics, right? Not your typical B2B logistics, which is big truck comes in to warehouse, little truck goes out to downtown. Ours is big truck comes into warehouse, 30,000 orders go out, and you have to deal with returns and etc. So when you see the bottom piece, that is actually the stuff we have to start to solve. And we try to deliver also, right? Meaning that we try to outsource delivery. But the challenges we faced was that delivery guys would not do COD, would not collect. And that was a challenge, because COD is a very critical part. Why? Because you look at credit card penetration, it's incredibly low stuff. So this is to explain to you what we're doing, what we do, before I start to go into the data. So Thailand versus Southeast Asia market. So this is just a Thailand at a glance. As you notice, there's mobile data there, and I'm doing that on purpose. I want to show you that how important mobile is going to be for not just, you know, for not just e-commerce, but for advertising and etc. Right? But when you look at the 3G subscribers, like 55 million, you look at the growth of revenues for telecom companies, right? True, DTAC, AIS, the non-voice data is growing huge, right? What does that mean? Mobile internet. What does mobile internet mean? It's going to drive mobile advertising, no, not mobile, just advertising in general, and e-commerce, right? So it's just another screen, but for some reason, this is people's first time that they experience the internet. So it's in some ways a big potential in a land grab strategy. So here, just want to show, there's Thailand there, but look at that, look at how internet, right? Our markets evolve so differently than the other markets. I'm not sure, I don't watch that much Thai television, right? But maybe that content isn't that great. I don't know what the, why the entertainment, why TV isn't being picked up, but Thailand, in terms of internet, it's huge. I know some of you guys may have been at the YouTube launch event, whatever, but YouTube in Thailand for videos is the second largest market in Asia, right, for video consumption. So Thais love video. Here, I want to highlight, and if you guys have a chance, take a look at the video interview with Bloomberg, with Masayoshi-san, SoftBank Japan. SoftBank is huge, owns I believe around 36% of Alibaba that's about to go IPO. They just acquired Supercell. Anyway, they're mega, they big acquisition of Sprint. They're basically a telecom company, right? So why am I following a telecom company CEO? Because he's saying that everything's going to be on the mobile internet, right? Everything will be, mobile internet will be driving the future. And he's looking at the ecosystem and going, e-commerce companies are going to benefit, gaming companies are going to benefit, and he's starting to double down on that, right? So when you look at mobile, and then just looking at the stats on the right, the Thailand stuff, right? 90% of Thais online report they're able to access internet, right? So mobile internet, sorry. So 51% Thais mobile internet access made on online purchase. And yes, it starts off with like in-game and in-app, right? But that's a transaction. They're getting used to basically pulling out their credit cards, right? The scary company to watch for me is going to be Apple, right? The moment they go from digital goods to physical goods, they have about 600 to 700 million credit cards on file already. So they already have your wallet, right? So the moment they trigger that, it's gonna change. But what does this mean? This means that True, DTAC, and AIS that own the pipe, huge opportunity. But what are they going to do about it, right? For all of us here, or all you guys here, we're hoping they're going to acquire their way through. Right now, I'll highlight that later. But, so here, you're talking about smartphone sales. So just looking at even smartphone sales, just to show you proof, right? Here we have the rise of smartphones and e-commerce activities. So people that purchased, Thailand 51% who made purchases on their phones. Mind you though, a lot of this is also travel, a lot of it is also digital goods, right? But it is the beginning. Specifically on Thailand, but when you see credit card usage, it's also going up, right? It's also growing quickly. And you're looking at, a lot of companies out here that are actually, I saw it more actually in Indonesia, but the deals that they're giving, they're almost like handing out credit cards, like for free, right? So every e-commerce segment in Southeast Asia is double-digit growth. You're looking at whether it's sports, electronics, home and garden, right? So by category, things are growing double-digit online, or what people are actually purchasing and buying. This is Thailand year-on-year growth, 2011 to 2015. Everything here is saying e-commerce is growing. But what's interesting is let's dig deeper into the data, right? So how many people are buying from local and buying from foreign? So when you look at kind of the 32% of purchases in Thailand happening on foreign sites, right? What does that mean? That means Thais are hungry for product, right? And they can't find it in their home market. So therefore, they go out and they start to look, right? And so what does this mean in opportunity? This means cross-border e-commerce. Cross-border e-commerce is buying something from America and getting it shipped to you, right? And meaning that it goes through customs, everything is seamless. Today, it's ridiculous, the whole customs, the tariffs they add on there. If you know you order stuff from Amazon, you know, it takes the kind of last minute surprises that the FedEx guy gives you. It's ridiculous. So we are trying to help solve that problem also, which is we're trying to work with international companies to help with some of that, those issues. So when you look at the top 3 and 4 on the side, obviously it's apps, hotel accommodation, but the toys and gifts, huge. So Amazon, the leading, I mean, a lot of you guys have seen some of these stats before, but Amazon is the #1 site still being served. But what's interesting is it's more on the content. And I'll tell you why. Here's my theory, right? My theory is because of Amazon's, I mean, when you look at SEO on Amazon, right, it's awesome, right? They have every product. I mean, every little product you can think of, like you type it down on Google, Amazon will come up because no one else has listed it yet. Right? So just from an SEO perspective, I think Amazon actually you know, has favored rankings in English language, right? That's why Thailand, right, it's not #1. Because people, when they type down things in Thai, Amazon isn't there doing SEO in Thai. What does that mean? That means that you have an advantage in Thailand to actually start to own the market. But as you can see, you know, We Love Shopping, there's Tarat, there's Lazada. So it's already, you know, everyone's already vying, you know, competing to get in that space. You know what I mean? If you, like, this is from a marketplace, right? But it's also a great opportunity as well. Rocket Internet, Lazada is growing fast. So when you look at from 2012 to 2013, and they're grabbing that from Amazon. This is probably the slide, the data that they gave that raised them a shitload of money, right? You know, when they raised money from Tesco, they raised money from, you know, huge investors. But they're doing an awesome job. I mean, from my point of view, it's like when they came in 2012, they were basically starting to set standards in the market, and everyone has to start to step up to those standards, right? And it's good. Competition is good, right? A lot of people think that, oh, they're competitors, but in the general, in the whole pie, like e-commerce is 1%. You know, I mean, I don't think we should be looking at each other, meaning internet companies should be looking at other internet companies and be going, okay, how do we strategically grow this pie together from traditional retail, the big retailers, right? Because the trend is going down this path, right? The trend, so I'm not gonna go into detail what website, right? But we have clients where they have basically inventory, like 350 SKUs of inventory, of which only 100 of it is available offline in retail, but 350 available online, right? So on the purchasing behavior, right, the long tail, 40% of the sales are coming from that remaining 250, meaning product selection. Stuff that's not available offline, Boots, Watsons, these guys can only stock a certain amount of inventory. So when brands go online, they can list all their inventory out. And that's very valuable, both for SEO and to actually get people to buy, you know, their products. They're not so popular products, not best sellers. So this is the leading e-commerce companies. Like this is kind of what we highlight to show, you know, in terms of like by country. So these are the only markets that we're in. So we look at the markets and go, okay, which market, who's doing what in what market, right? But for us, our job is to help a brand navigate all this, right? So brands come to us and say, help me with this, right? Because this isn't easy. So here's my assumption, right? But I think that Thailand is not a winner-takes-all market, right? I think that there's enough to have like 5 or 6 Amazons out here, right? And it's a lot of niches also. niche sites as well, right? So I think that, you know, as you can see, even the AVG one, ignore that, right? But when you look at kind of all the top e-commerce sites, and there's more, right? Like the market is pretty open. It's not like a China market. The China market, right, with Tmall, in Tmall, like 80% market share. I mean, that's unheard of. It's huge, right? So you look at Tmall, and then you look at the US, and you're like, okay, who's the big player in the US? Amazon. 26% market share, right? Amazon in the US. Tmall, 80%. Which, if you were a marketplace, or you were an e-commerce company, which company would you follow? Which company would you copy? Right? Marketplaces. That's why there's a shitload of marketplaces out here. And in Southeast Asia. There's literally 5 in each market. And I'm not even counting the ones that are about to come out also. So there's a lot of new ones coming out. So what makes Thailand and the other markets different is Philippines and Indonesia, way too many islands. Right? It's painful for logistics. Right? But is that opportunity? Yes, opportunity as well. Right? So when you look at islands in the Philippines, I mean, look at Indonesia, right? There's a lot of problems to solve there, for sure. So Thailand has a geographical advantage in ASEAN, right? Because it's connected to China. So we start to have basically companies go, can I ship stuff by truck from China into Thailand? Not by ship, right? Not by plane. And that is an opportunity, right? Because you can, well, the shipping prices are cheap, incredibly much cheaper that way, right? But you look at the laws that are changing, and there's an advantage. Like, how do you take advantage? Sorry, of kind of the laws, and also the whole free trade. You know, so there's the free trade. There's the AEC 2015, right? So the border, the trade barriers are going to drop, right? And I just also, when I was in China about 3 weeks ago, and they told me, and our e-commerce company told me that, you know, it's interesting that a lot of people think, right, about China and about how you can basically source product out of China. But not very many people are thinking about how do I start to sell Thai products in China, right? And you start to think that way. Why? Because Chinese, look at e-commerce, right? Huge appetite, right? I mean, they're not going to be #1 in e-commerce market. What does Thailand have that China doesn't have? Natural resources, food, right? Food products, especially the pollution up there. So there's a lot of opportunity also when we talk outbound, right? So if you want to try something like that, you better hire a Chinese dude, right? Because you're going to need to know the language, but the opportunity is up there. And you can see all the routes, so as Laos, Cambodia, and all these other markets start opening up, that's what makes Thailand a very ideal market. So Thailand ranks 3rd in logistics competency. Obviously Malaysia and Singapore are smaller markets, but I think just mainly in terms of the geographic location makes it ideal. So ASEAN integration, so Thailand's logistic industry, right? So when you look at the AEC, it's really going to be favoring logistics companies, but everything that favors logistics companies is going to get also very competitive as well. So AEC, you're looking at international logistics, VAT, and etc. Now a lot of people though in the industry are going, yes, it's going to happen. They're going to drop the trade barriers down. You'll be able to, if you manufacture anything within Southeast Asia, you can send it out to each markets, like without tax, without being taxed, without being all the customs duties and whatnot, right? So that's the advantage. But will it actually happen in 2015? That's the question. So it's more of a strategy, a blueprint than anything. Thailand logistics costs will become cheaper. So right now, so how we always get our clients to look at things is what percentage of your business is going into logistics. Pick, pack, ship, the gasoline, everything, right? So when you add it all up, there's a percentage. And when you look at other markets, right? Unfortunately, Thailand is still very high, but basically as any business starts to mature, right? The supply chain, the processes are optimized. therefore price will drop. I'm not saying our prices are going to drop. Just check. So Thailand is a social media market, but social commerce is yet to be proven. Like when you look at Facebook average conversion rate, whoever has an e-commerce company, you can look at Facebook conversion rate yourself. If you're doing a good job of getting 1% because you're doing a lot of interesting content, that's great. This is just a very general kind of benchmark. Just don't be going into Facebook going, okay, my entire business is going to be built around social commerce and Facebook, right? Because you'll be very disappointed. And Facebook also it's not, before, as you know, your ads can only reach a certain percentage of your fans, right? So, people now all the advertising agencies that pitch fans, it's all about bringing up your fan base. I mean, you got to look at alternatives. That's definitely not the silver bullet. But one interesting thing, though, I would say is the amount of people that are selling via Facebook. But I would say, my gut feel tells me Line is grabbing a big chunk of that, right? So what's really interesting is, I just study habits, right? Like people, general habits. So they'll go on Instagram, okay, let me ask you, I'm going to explain to you this habit and raise your hand if you think you've seen this before. They see things on Instagram, they see things on Facebook, and then they basically call, right, to purchase that product, right? So, or they actually sign you up online to communicate directly with you online to purchase that. And that is what we call C2C, right? So Facebook is a tool that a lot of people use that for that reason, and also even Line. What's amazing is that even my gardener has a Line account. And I literally see her, this is amazing, right? Because you can see that Line has actually, in some ways, got people, right, where they didn't even use email, didn't even use like Facebook, but for some odd reason, because of the free calling online, they started getting on board. And imagine when Skype had like a 10-year lead on that, right? But just completely blew that up. They had that huge lead, right? But now Line is just taking over aggressively, which goes to my next slide. Line, average visit to transaction is 1.5%. Surprisingly, it's pretty good as a conversion, right? Will that drop? Like in any kind of basically, any new app or any new platform out there, right? You have this like kind of hype, right, in the early stage. But again, it depends. So this is, Line transaction by device, right? Amazingly, you're going 25% on desktop. I even had to download the desktop app just to see what the hell it was, because I didn't even know Line had a desktop app. But people are making that decision or transaction on there. That's what's amazing. So there's still this reliance, right, on desktop. But when you talk about transactions, that's COD transaction. So that's not pulling out a credit card, just to disclose. Majority of that is actually COD, but we do offer credit card on there as well. And so this here in a non-Bangkok, so at higher AOV means that Line, because of its massive reach, allows you to reach an audience that's outside of Bangkok. And when you're outside of Bangkok, when you order something, and you don't order that often, you're going to basically order higher volume, which means average order value, right, is higher, right? And the same thing kind of happens when you order things from Singapore or let's say Amazon. You want to actually, because you don't order that often, you want to like stock it up, right? So that's basically what that means. Top marketing channels that converts direct to site. For people who already have very set, they're going to go to a site. They're going to go to a site. Like that's pretty straightforward. Email. But before I continue, but you can see it right on here what all this means. But one interesting thing back in the day when we were running in Soho, right? One interesting stat was that we decided to go, or one of our investors said, hey, you gotta go and do offline media. I'm like, that's crazy, that shit's expensive, right? We're not gonna do that. No, you gotta try, like offline media, the conversion's actually pretty high, right? Decent, right? And what's really fascinating for me was that, anyway, we did offline media, we did billboard, we did like bus and BTS, but the traffic that when the conversions we got were direct to site, actually was 30 to 40%, meaning people woke up in the morning, typed down in Soho, right? So when we were acquired by Living Social, and we heard the Living Social, well, what are your stats? Because we're comparing, right? They're like 80 to 80% via email, right? And like less than 10% even going to the site directly, right? So what happened was that we branded like the market, right? We branded the internet, the internet audience, where they actually started typing down our name, and that was hugely valuable. It wasn't cheap, but it was valuable, right? And so when you compare the data from going direct to site via email is still a massive driver, right? But email is significantly important, right? Because I say this all the time, right? So let me paint a picture, right, about the kind of advertising we do today and the conversions we get and how we track the customer. I'm trying to find a brand. So a brand in a supermarket, right? They spend millions, even billions of advertising to drive you. Let's call it Colgate, right? Drives you to a store to go buy Colgate, right? Even you could say Samsung does the same thing. There's a lot of marketing dollars driving you to the store, to an electronics store, to buy the product. What happens when you get there in a retail site, right? You have other options. Shit, you even have Tesco lotion. You have Tesco toothpaste, right? You have Boots, Watson's, their own toothpaste now, private label, right? And also they're pushing all the different ads, everything on there. So you're driving the consumer to go, right, to a retail site to ideally have their brand top of mind so they can buy that product. They buy that product once, they go check out. Now, what does the brand get? Do they get that customer as a repeat buyer? Do they get data about that customer? They don't own that data. The retailer owns that data, right? So some of the challenges you face with traditional media is that when basically you acquire a customer on the internet, you don't have to keep marketing and blasting them in traditional media, right? You actually have already a one-on-one relationship with them via email. So therefore, you're wondering why aren't people doing more e-commerce, right? And spend more time acquiring a customer via internet, because they get to actually own it and they get to actually communicate with them. So type of payment options, COD, credit card, transactions by devices in general, this is overall. So this report, this one was interesting. This is fairly new, very recent, e-consultancy. Spent some money for this one. It's basically very general, right? It's like, okay, do brands or agencies have a separate e-commerce budget? Right? This one's very important for our investors. They want to know, is there budgets out there for e-commerce? Yes, e-commerce has a separate and dedicated budget, right? So the left is basically the company, and then to the right are agency respondents. And it's really interesting, right? Because when you look at it, it's like, do they have budgets? Yes, and then what is the budget for, right? So the biggest barriers to e-commerce for brands and agencies, for them, the agency says it's lack of strategy. The agency says the brand doesn't have a strategy for e-commerce. The lack of integration into the rest of the business. But for the brand, it's lack of budget and resources, internal resources. They don't have an e-commerce team. They don't have an e-commerce person to manage all this, right? So that's the challenge. That's what we're hoping to help with, obviously. So a lot of data, throwing a lot of data at you. So I think it was on the agenda, formulas for success. I mean, formulas for success is you just got to be relentless, right? So when you raise money, that money gives you an option to start to make different, like basically, if your one business model isn't working, you pivot. That's not working, you pivot. Some companies get a longer lifeline. If I raise a shitload of money, I get 5 or 6 tries at making sure my business is successful. If I get less money, you get 1 or 2 tries, then boom, that's it, you're gone. You run out of money, you're dead, get it like you're one of the 90%, right? That's what raising money is about. Giving you more chances, giving more lifelines. But business, this ain't easy either. You have to constantly go after each different vertical. And in today's market, when you go after, let's say I'm an advertising company, if you're not looking at media and you're not looking at e-commerce or commerce in general, right, you're going to start to get get swallowed up, right? If you're in media and you're not good at advertising or even commerce, monetizing your content, right? These other guys are going to come in and go, hey, I'll create your media and completely get rid of you. So what does that mean? Companies today have to look downstream and upstream, right? It's difficult. Obviously, you've got to focus on one thing first, but you always have to keep an eye on both upstream and downstream and who's coming down, right? When you look at e-commerce, e-commerce companies are going, like, you know, who do you, like e-commerce companies now, like, who do you compete with? Right? I ask this, I like to ask that because I want to know who people think they compete with, right? And they go, what's really interesting was some companies were going, I think I'm competing with mine. It's like, what do you mean? Like you're an e-commerce company? Yeah, but they're kind of worried, right? Because you're looking at 26 million users. What are you going to do with that fire hose, right? That threat is there. So all of a sudden you have media companies now and e-commerce companies going, okay, how do I defend against this? Because if I do something good, they're going to come right into it because they have all the audience. They have the advertising, you know what I mean, capabilities. And then e-commerce companies now have to start to think about, are you doing just Facebook or are you doing just Google for customer acquisition? Because if that's all you're doing, shit, someone with more money can just get rid of you. So you have to be smarter about how you acquire a customer now. Not just the same old shit like, you know, basically Google and Facebook. Not to say that's still core, right? But, you know, it's how do you actually convert those users into repeat buyers, that's also key. Sorry, to digress. Formulas for success. Team. We got lucky being able to attract a talented team, right? So for us, you know, obviously up here on the top, we have the regional, right? But we get down and dirty, meaning that, you know, even though we're a regional team, every market we go into, we basically double up the regional guys to go start up the market, right? So when you look at you know, Indonesia, X-Rocket, obviously also X-McKinsey, some of these guys have worked for me and we worked with me in the past businesses. You know, Sabina, which is our new you know, hire in Singapore, ex-Amazon, Apple, Walmart. One interesting thing she said that I learned from her was that she was telling me that when Walmart.com launched in the US and they decided to move basically from Kentucky or whatever to go to Silicon Valley to set up Walmart.com because they wanted to be an internet company, not to be like, you know, an extension of a traditional retail. And then she said 70% of their merchandising, right, in Walmart.com does not exist in traditional Walmart. It wasn't just we sell whatever's in Walmart. They completely created a different business. And that's what they realized that they needed to do to basically win the market. Because you have Amazon, you have all the big, you know, Overstock, you have all the big companies out there, right? And, you know, for example, Ray, just his experience in Amazon, also very, very useful. You know, focusing on, you know, customer experience and etc. So the vision for us, grand vision, right? Why do we do Southeast Asia? You know, just for us, we always focus on Southeast Asia. It's very complicated, it's hard, multi-language, multi-currency, blah, 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 right? So whatever is difficult, we like to basically do. So in terms of powering e-commerce, products and services, right, that help brands and retailers really kind of make money online, right? So we like to be the facilitator. Anytime, anywhere, anything. Right? So when we look at e-commerce, it's, you know, I would look at a billboard, and I would look at the mobile phone, and I would look at SMS, and I would look at that and go, how can I buy that billboard with my SMS? Like, that's how I'm trying to look at e-commerce now. Our DNA, our past businesses have been B2B. So as you can see, you know, we like to help companies, you know, facilitate, basically, to get them to understand how internet works. And they also have the brands, the big brands that we know we can leverage and create that relationship with the consumer. So again, as I was saying, we love to solve hard problems locally because it creates real value. To the left, that's our office, and then to the right, that's the warehouse. So I'll tell you why we build what we build, right? We like building companies out here that have an component because it's defensible. So when Facebook or Google or any big company comes into the market, do they want to build a warehouse? No. Will they just turn on the technology and put a language feature on and kill me if I was only technology? Yes, right? So that's my aim. Companies out here, if you're a great programmer, a great developer, and you think you can compete in the worldwide market, great. If you think you can carve out a niche in Thailand, that's awesome, right? But for me, I've been working with kind of, I guess, the big companies. Back in the day, Microsoft and Yahoo, we were actually their exclusive rep. That was our old business. And I swear, every day I woke up, I was paranoid. Right? When were these guys going to wake up and just go, we will now do this? Bye-bye. Right? So when you think about it, we always kept thinking, what could we build that these guys couldn't just do? Right? So we end up building a very strong sales team, building out a very strong ad network, integrating with as many websites as possible. There's a component where a company comes in to the market and goes, ooh, I don't want to build all that. Right? So either they invest, they acquire, and what is that component? Right? What makes it difficult for another company to come in? So, you know, we are sales driven, right? So we don't do marketing plans, media plans, we do sales plans. Because that is the heart of the company, sales. When you look at all this stuff, it's about traffic, first-time buyer, repeat, top buyers. So that's just a lot of data, right? But all that means, right, is that what products are selling well today, what has the most margins, and how do I optimize that product today, tomorrow, on my website, right? What is the best media channel that drives to sales, right? Is it email, is it Google, is it Facebook, or is it a new keyword, you know? The new keyword, maybe someone should use the Thai crew keyword right now, because that's going to drive a lot of traffic to wherever you want to send it to. But that's what I mean, right? Because like if you don't know where your sales are coming from, you're flying blind. And so you have to know in some sense where your traffic's coming from. Prediction and trends. So prediction trends. So companies want to sell everywhere, right? So it's like, it's not just about one place, like on this channel. They want to sell everywhere. Multi-channel management, multiple marketplaces for us. We help brands navigate this and sell them on multiple marketplaces. Cross-border e-commerce, trying to handle logistics, FDA approval, you know what I mean, like customs clearance. So companies here, like whether they sell in Thailand and they want to expand into the other regions and the other markets, we want to help them with that. O2O, online to offline, right? This technically, the Insogo business we did back in the past was very similar to this. And what that means is capturing leveraging engagement online, marketing online, and then the transaction or the behavior happens offline. You drive them offline, right? And this is going, like today, when you look at it, it's like, you know, per product decisions, when someone goes in and buys, right? Like watch a customer, watch even teenagers, right? They will go in to Paragon or Central and they will look at the product and they'll get on their phone right away and start to look, right? Price comparison sites, they want to look at, it's not reviews, it's really checking if the price, if they can actually find that price cheaper, right? So that influence is already happening online on digital. Right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, you have to be in a computer or at home. No, you could be actually at that product you're about to buy and you're going to check it before you purchase it. So the digital influence component is going to be massive. And you know, how do you take advantage of that? Online advertising is going to boom. It's just there's an imbalance with the reach that you have for online and how much advertising is going into that. I'm almost done. So e-commerce solutions will get very competitive. So when you look at us, this is how we look at basically all the components that we do, fulfillment platforms, consulting, marketing, delivery. When you look at this, these are all the guys that can completely come into your space. You want to talk about upstream, downstream, like left, right, up, down, we look everywhere. So more funding and exits. So this is trends, right? More funding and exits in Southeast Asia. I think that's going to be a trend. Indonesia, damn. Indonesia has a lot of investors going into there. Huge. It's a big market. And not only is it a big market, it's because when you look at kind of all, whether it's private equity, it's all the research that's being done, it's kind of going like China, India, Indonesia, right? That's always going to get the president over the rest. Like when you see all the articles out there, it's always Indonesia, Indonesia. Even the reports, right? They'll have very Indonesia-specific reports, right? So when you look at this, so when I say high valuations in the BRICS, meaning that it's Brazil, it's Russia, it's India, it's China, and it's South Africa, the valuations are high. Meaning that for an investor, it's very expensive for them to invest in a company. So they look at emerging markets as a potential to go in and invest in here instead. And we're getting enough hype out here. Since 2005, there have been 53 tech acquisitions. Just give you a kind of overview. 8% coming from Thailand. And I will finish off with Ray, our CEO for Philippines. And he says the challenge e-commerce is facing is that there are many broken parts in the value chain. Someone trying to solve one particular problem finds that he has to solve a few other problems first. And this is the pain in doing, this isn't just e-commerce, this is the pain in doing business in Southeast Asia, right? It's like when you go into payments, is there banking licenses? And then when you go to banking license, like all of a sudden, what kind of company have you set up? It's not easy. Just go after one problem after another, after another. Some people just go, oh, forget it, right? But the ones that are relentless, like wins, right? Because sometimes you can't just solve one, you have to solve like 3 or 4 problems. And that's when funding comes into play, right? And for me, it's like sometimes when you look at the success of the other markets, it's because they had a lot of money to go solve those problems. But out here, there's not enough capital coming in, right, to actually get an entrepreneur to solve that problem. And also the big companies are very comfortable, right? And they're actually monopolies out here. A lot of people don't think that, but the big companies like Central, the mall group, right, they have some serious monopolies, right? And a lot of people don't actually go, oh, you know, it's like, you don't understand the startup world. No, you ever try to go like this route or that route, and you can see that it's like, it's being ran by some major families. It's not easy. And therefore, you either need them to support you, or you need foreign capital to come in to basically, you know, to battle it out, right? Or to compete against them, to compete against local, right? Because in Asia, there's a bigger, China especially has this kind of like, I would rather build than acquire, right? Out here, they always think they can build, also. And one thing I would also say is, always be careful sometimes that when you go in, right, and you're pitching a company, right, they will look at, I mean, basically they want, just because they're big, and you're like, oh, I want to do everything to get them to like me, to get them to invest, and you expose everything, that's their tactic to also try to, you know, maybe potentially do their own thing, right? So, but that's just the nature of the game out here. I think that is it. Yes. Thank you.
All right. We have about 10 minutes for question and answer. Anyone wants to ask more any questions?
Yes, yeah, I have one.
You can show it out.
Yeah, I have one voice audio, right?
Yes.
So because you say that it's quite difficult, so I don't like to speak on the microphone, so I hope you hear me.
Sure.
So because this is from Tech in Asia, so there was an article a few weeks ago on Tech in Asia, 2 major firms that were entering Southeast Asia and were specifically interested in China, right? So you think it's changing or not?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, maybe they pull out again for today, but
yeah, that is a problem. I mean, I'll just tell you, right? Like, from data, It started on Tuesday, right? Sales across the board dipped 30 to 40%. Boom. Right? Like, what the hell happened? Where are my orders? Right? Across the board. Right? So you can see that the market actually, and not only that, like you ask like the big retailers, and they're going, their numbers are hurting the big retailers. Right? They just saw big shopping malls, like new ones being launched, right? And they're hurting also. So anyway, but that doesn't help, right? Meaning that, so from my perspective, I think they're very selective, the investors, even though they say it's Southeast Asia, but they're very, very selective, right? And for us, that's why we always had to rely on going into another market, right? Because just of the potential risk, right? And also, I think that, you know, from a Thailand perspective, if you're going and raising funding, right? Like, you have to really hustle. You have to go and meet, like, you know, when you think you've met enough, like 50 investors, no, you gotta go meet like 100 investors, right? Why? Because somebody is going to resonate with your business. Like, Kevin's in the beauty business, right? So, looking for people that invest into beauty, right, is an easy sell. Then you run around, you basically try to find Luxola, all these companies that basically invest into beauty, and then you tap into their investment base, right? Go to China, go to Japan, right? And that's what LinkedIn is for. But that's the problem is having to go look for those companies, right? Because you actually have to pursue them rather than them coming in. That's the, you know, and you see all these people talking about Southeast Asia Fund. I mean, like, you know, you gotta also see what, you know, from each VC, like, what is their sweet spot, right? Like, what do they like to invest into? And I think sometimes that people have a certain sweet spot for very specific things that they know about, right? In certain VCs will be very specific in that. And also, if they've already invested in a beauty company, some of the challenges is like, why would they invest in a potential competitor, right? So that's also the thing you gotta think about from an investment perspective. And out of the, let's say the 50 that you go to, and the one that you thought was like perfect, I found them, right? This guy's gonna fund, you know, be lead investor and do everything. The one that you didn't expect to come in is the one that comes in. And the one that you want to come in is like, oh, last minute change, boom, right? It's literally, like, you know, I mean, obviously, as you know, I mean, some of you guys may know we're going to the fundraising, and it is like this. That is that journey. Right? And it's like up and down, right? It's crazy. Sorry, any other questions?
No, the headline. Just ignore the headline.
Sure.
What do you think Central's reaction is going to be to what Lazada has really ramped it up in the last week in terms of offering things online? But Central's pretty quiet so far. I don't think what they intend to do.
I mean, I think that, so I think those guys, first of all, have to really analyze it's a return on investment, right? Because they're also public companies. So when they just start dumping money into something that has no rationale, I mean, or that has no real ROI involved, right? It's like, that's the challenges, I think, that when you face as a public company, as a big company, right? But they are doing something about it. They acquired a company called OfficeMate, and they're consolidating everything under that. So I think out of all the other markets, amazing, right? When you talk to SM Group, Robinson's Group, the top 3 retailers in every market, they actually look at Central's going, those guys are pretty innovative. We like to do what Central's doing. They kind of like follow them, right? So that's actually, for me, when I hear a third party say that, I was like, whoa, because you know, like you think they're slow, right? But in some sense, they're actually very strategic in how they're trying to basically attack e-commerce. A pure play e-commerce without the paranoia of cannibalization, right? Like has an advantage already, right? But you know, but in our markets, it's a little different because of monopoly, right? Number one, and number two, I think that like traditional retail is also still growing. Right? So my thinking is that when you start to look at the things that are happening in the market, meaning that O2O, buy online, go pick it up offline. If Central does to do omni-channel means I can buy online, pick it up at the store, I can, you know, but pay online and then, whatever, what I mean? Like it's integrated with the offline, right? If they do that well, right, huge advantage. But usually companies do not go into omni-channel until e-commerce is roughly around 10% of their total revenues. 10% of total revenues for Central, that's going to be a little tough. But I think that, it's more of the mall group. I haven't seen them do really anything. That's the one that's like, whoa, you're just going to let them, because you see them building this $1 billion whatever out in Bang now, right, this new mall, right, you're like, like crazy, right, like, and no online presence. So, interesting. But it's also interesting how what one person inside those companies, what one person with a vision can do. And that's finding that person is difficult for these guys.
So you think Central will beat this game?
I don't think it's again, for me it's not one company will win it all, right? Like, because you're not even factoring in, like, so here's my take on it is the Chinese guys, that's the scary one. Why? Follow the source, right? Where are all our products coming from, right? China. So when China wants us to come in with all the products and brand at a much cheaper price than Central, because they've sorted out their customs, like it's all about just sorting out the customs, right? Imagine you buy Apple products, and a lot of people think it's being shipped from the US. It's shipped from China. That's why it gets to you pretty fast, right? Because they're being all manufactured in China, even Apple's products. I think the sleeping giant is the Alibabas, right? Where everything's being manufactured, even AliExpress, right? You can buy all the things that are being made over there. So I think that those guys will have a huge opportunity coming out here. But they're still trying to fight it out in their own backyard. Okay? Any more questions? Yeah.
I saw on your book said that you were in Indonesia. I saw in your mix that you were in Indonesia and Singapore and Philippines here. What about Malaysia or even Myanmar?
It's Malaysia and Vietnam would be usually, and the reason why is we have to focus, right? Meaning that the funding that we would raise, you go after 6 markets and build warehouses and delivery fleets, right? Like I will never get to see my kids. I'm just joking. No, but we do it in stages. You have to grab the markets. Even 4 is actually pretty aggressive. You know what I mean? Because we we launched in June 2013. And I'm on a plane quite often, right? But the whole thing is that if we grab more markets, we don't get to really be good at one in these markets. So we have to make sure we get that down, right? These 4 markets. And then the other 2 are going to come in. But yes, again, it's the return on investment. So Burma and all these guys, the numbers aren't there yet, right?
Do you have any data for Burma with e-commerce?
No. I think you should just look at internet penetration first. But mobile, I would say, what was it? QTEL, Qatar, they won the telecom rights for that. I think it's DTAC, I can't remember, but they're going to go in pretty aggressively. I know some people that are actually already investing into like community sites, social networking sites already in Burma, right? But very early days. I think that it's more like if you did where they could buy products from Thailand. Laos bought products from Thailand or Cambodia, it's better being served out of here, probably in the short term, versus actually going in there and setting it up. Yep. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
That's all. That's where we come to the end of Tech Asia Meetup. So we'd like to thank our sponsors for making this possible. And just one last announcement. We're going to have Startup Asia Tokyo in 3rd and 4th September. So if you have any questions, you can go to startupasia.com or you can look for me. Fine. So yeah, guys, that's about it.